Let's stay with that story, and to discuss just what the future may hold, we're joined by two men who were born in the Middle East, now living in Australia. Both still have very strong links to their homelands.
Ittay Flescher is a teacher at a Jewish school in Melbourne and involved in programs promoting interfaith dialogue between Jews and Muslims. And he's with us now in the studio, while in Adelaide, Professor Bassam Dally joins us. He's an executive board member of the Australian Palestinian Advocacy Network. Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
Ittay Flescher, I'll just start with you. Are you confident that the ceasefire that has been signed will hold?
I guess all I can do is hope that it will, because the Israelis and Palestinians, we've been fighting against each other for far too long, and this can't continue like this. Both of us want to raise children that live in peace. We want to send them to school. We want them to grow up in a normal way, just like Australian people want to have the best for their children, and I hope and pray that it does.
Bassam Dally, can I bring you into the conversation now? How confident are you that that ceasefire will hold?
I think it seems there's willing on both sides for it to happen. My only concern is that all this death and destruction is going to be all in vain. So Palestinians, I think, are hoping that at least the siege is lifted and that their loss is not sort of went in vain. I mean, there was a lot of destruction and death in the last war.
Yeah, destruction and death on both sides of the border. Why do you say it was in vain?
Well, the thing is, I noted in the previous item of news, your reporter said that life in Israel and Palestine went back to normality. Unfortunately, what this means for the Palestinian is different what it means for the Israelis. Israelis can go sort of their lives living in a sort of modern country, while Palestinians live under siege. They can go and fish, they can travel, they can trade. Their country is being devastated, and is this normality in a way? So what the Palestinians are fighting for is actually freedom, and to be able to live, as Ittay said, free, raise their children, and basically live any normal life like any other people. However, this has been denied to them by the occupation, and this is why they're fighting in the first place.
Ittay Flescher, what's your response to that? Because one of the key things that has to be negotiated now is the opening of those border crossings.
So as part of the ceasefire agreement, there were terms that Israel would ease those restrictions. People in Israel have also, for the last 10 years, people in the south of Israel have constantly been running to bomb shelters, have found it very difficult to live normal lives, especially people in the south, in Sderot, in Beersheba. I spoke to my family there yesterday, and life in the past week has been intolerable with the constant rockets, constant air raid sirens. So it's no party in the south of Israel at the moment, and I desperately want this to end. The reason the blockade is there is to prevent Hamas from bringing in more weapons and more rockets. Hopefully part of this ceasefire will involve Egypt actually enforcing that no more weapons do come in, and that would be a wonderful contribution that the Egyptian people can make. And I also want to state that Israel's beef here is not with the Palestinian people. I have many Palestinian friends, and I know that they are good people, that they want to live in peace. We want to live in peace with them. Our beef is with Hamas, an anti-Semitic organisation that preaches hate against the Jewish people, against Israel.
And Bassam Dally, can I ask you your views on, and you're certainly talking about improving the plight of Palestinians per se, but what do you think of Hamas's tactics here? And let's not forget that this is still an organisation committed to Israel's destruction.
Well, let's put some context to this. The occupation preceded Hamas, preceded PLO, preceded any of these problems. I mean, unfortunately, everybody is concentrating on the rockets, and I obviously condemn any violence from both sides. Now, Hamas already said that if Mahmoud Abbas, the president of the Palestinian Authority, is to negotiate a peace with Israel, they're more than happy to accept it as long as it's put to a referendum to the Palestinian people. Hamas want peace the same way as the Israelis want peace. The problem remains is that Israel is conditioned anything that it wants to do with sort of determining the, I guess, political map of the Palestinians, who they elect, how they conduct the business. I mean, if we now take Egypt as an example of an Islamic movement that actually emerged in a way, Egypt is now the peace broker in the Middle East. So I have to basically acknowledge that Hamas was elected in a free and fair election, and they represent the aspiration of the Palestinian people. Now, the fact is that, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, okay, and that's nobody can dispute the fact they were legitimately elected, but they are deemed a terrorist organisation by many countries, including the United States. And do you think that by changing their approach, dropping, for instance, that commitment to destroy Israel, may further the Middle East peace process?
Well, the PLO also had the same charter of actually destroying Israel at the same time, and Israel made peace with them. In fact, they didn't change the charter until 3 years after they signed the Oslo Accord. So people can call for whatever they want. Hamas has proven to be a politically mature organization, is willing to negotiate peace with Israel. The problem remains is that Israel's precondition for this is unacceptable to the Palestinians. Let me just bring the discussion a little bit away from Hamas as such. I know that the current conflict is Hamas, but the fact is the occupation is the problem. The Palestinians want to basically live in their independent states. Only peace, in my mind, will bring security to Israel. There's the superpower that they have and the bombardment that they do and the siege and so on cannot last forever. Now, are we blaming the Palestinians for resisting the occupation? I mean, it is their right to actually resist and live free, like the Israelis do. So the problem remains is the occupation of the Palestinian territories and the aspiration of Palestinian people for independence. Now, whatever tactics the Palestinians have used and will use is something to bring to this particular end. They started with the Intifada, the first Intifada, and the second Intifada, and there was the PLO. And then there was the Oslo Accord. And then I think the failure of the negotiation for peace and the diplomatic routes has basically fueled the pressure and the tension and supported an organization like Hamas to grow and to basically provide an alternative. Palestinians are not a violent people by nature. They're not an extremist people by nature. What they want is what everyone else wants, simply, to live freely in peace in their own land. They have already compromised of, 78% of historical Palestine. And whoever they elect as
Bassam Dally, we'll just get Ittay Flescher to respond to some of the things that you had to say there.
So, look, I truly believe that Jews and Muslims can live in peace in 12th century Spain. We've done it in my family's from Iraq. I know Jews and Muslims live together in peace there. And I know what Hamas represents is not what Islam is about. I know that from the interfaith dialogue that I've done, that Islam is a peaceful religion. It's a magnificent religion that's contributed many wonderful things to the world in art and architecture. And I think what Hamas is doing is representing Islam and representing the Palestinian people in a way that is not bringing out their best. In terms of how a peace deal could happen, there have been dozens of surveys done where they ask Israelis and Palestinians, how would you like this conflict to end? And they consistently say a two-state solution is the way to go.
On that point, though, the poll that was conducted just ahead of the ceasefire announcement showed that 70% of Israelis were against a ceasefire.
The reason many Israelis were against the ceasefire was because they feel the ceasefire, if it doesn't hold, will result in a short lull, a month, 2 months, and then continued rocket fire and continued suffering for the people in the south of Israel. And that's not something I want to continue. And for that to happen, Hamas needs to stop what it's doing and commit to coexistence, which it hasn't done.
Bassam Dally, we're just about out of time, but just very quickly, some final thoughts from you.
Well, two quick points. One, I don't agree with Ittay that the problem is between Muslims and Jews. There's also Christians living in there, and the problem was never a religious one. The second point about Hamas and the peace deal, it has never been about the violence and the resistance. Hamas is not is fighting Israel on ideological basis. It's basically wants freedom like anybody else. There's more to the Palestinian than just Hamas.
Bassam Dally in Adelaide, thank you very much. Ittay Flescher, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Well, let's